So the top 5 tips for delivering great webcasts. The first thing to remember, and this actually is one of the 5, is to don't forget the top 5 tips of a regular presentation and the other videos. So if you haven't seen that one yet, make sure you go and watch that one first. But the other 5 we want to talk about for specifically doing good webcasts are these. First of all, give an overview or a roadmap of what you're going to cover. You have to remember that when you think about your remote audience, they're watching you from their office or from their den or they're someplace else. They're not there in front of you. So there's a lot more distractions around them. Make sure you give them a clear roadmap of what you're going to cover, when you're going to cover it, and let them follow along and remind them, hey, we're on point number 4 of our 6-point program, or we're on point number 5 of our 9 points of whatever you're talking about. So give them a roadmap and stick to it. The second one is to consider using really good audio visuals and the webcast tools. Now, the audio visuals certainly are PowerPoint, which we'll get to in a minute, but don't be afraid to try to use video or use other kinds of media within your presentations. You have a good example of what happened on a particular case, or you want to talk about some aspect of the law that could be shown better by a video itself, then please do include a video. And then certainly consider and embrace the idea of webinar tools or webcast tools. And those are things like live polling. Let people vote on or answer a question and see how the results compare to other folks. Now you have to submit those polls ahead of time, but that's really easy to do. Consider using the chat function and encourage your audience to ask questions throughout your program, throughout your webcast. And just think about different ways to use as much tools as you can to make it feel interactive, to make it feel like it's a dialogue, to ask them questions throughout, and to really make it as dynamic as possible. The next one is to use PowerPoint, but use it wisely. So point number 3 is to use PowerPoint. And the number 1 point I'd make here is, unlike a live presentation, you want to make sure that you use more slides, they click through more often, but you have less on each slide. So in other words, instead of having a static slide that sits there for a long period of time and your audience can kind of start to get to bore of it, make sure you either have one bullet come up at a time in a build format, or make sure that you have just less material and just keep clicking through those slides. Or make sure you have an arrow come in to highlight an area, or maybe an underline pops up, or maybe something else dynamic happens with your slide, but you want to kind of keep those visuals coming and keep it very active and very kinetic. Point number 4 is to consider maybe having a co-presenter or a host interview you or ask you questions. There's something very exciting and dynamic about a repartee, a back and forth of 2 people. One example I think of is the famous NPR show Click and Clack, the Car Talk guys. Those guys play off each other really well, and the show's much stronger than if they had one equally funny person by himself just talking about cars and that sort of thing. So think about having a give and take with an interviewer or with a host. The final point is be enthusiastic. Don't speak in a monotone voice. Now, this might be easier said than done, but a couple things will help you resonate more strongly. One is to stand up when you talk. I'm standing up right now in these videos, and it's just because we tend to respirate and express ourselves better when we're standing versus when we're sitting. Number 2, use gestures. Don't be afraid to gesture freely. Now, you won't get too crazy with it, but gesture the way you'd normally talk. I mean, I always think about like a frustrated parent. They say, I've had it up to here. I am so mad. No, they naturally go, what? I've had it up to here. It's a natural point to want to bring up that hand to your forehead or however they've had it up to. So think about using gestures to bring your material to life and make it more engaging. And then to get excited about one key part of your material. Focus in on one aspect of your audience, listening and absorbing and acting on what you're saying and how you're actually making the world a better place, how you're making attorneys more effective because of the material that you're delivering. So to recap real quickly, first of all, revisit all the 5 points of delivering a good live presentation. But then number 1, give a good roadmap and an overview of what you're going to discuss. Number 2, consider audio visuals, videos, and the webcast tools. Number 3, use PowerPoint and use it effectively. Number 4, considering having a co-presenter or a host interview you throughout the program. And then finally, number 5, be enthusiastic and make that webcast really shine.